Welcome all to Instrumental Ecstasy. I'll briefly explain the format to those who weren't in the previous event. The format of the event is, it's more of an educational event. So we start with educating people who are new to the classical music of the subcontinent. And we've covered one chapter, which was the previous event. In this event, we'll cover the second chapter, which is rhythm. So the two main components of music essentially are the melody and the rhythm. So whenever you're singing a song, you hear a beat, which is the rhythm, which is very significant, and then there's a melody. In the classical music of the subcontinent, these are called the raga and the tala. So the first event we focused on the raga part, where we explained what raga is, how the rhythmic, how the raga develops and all. In this event, we'll talk a bit about the tala and the rhythmic cycle. Tala is when you sing, for instance, happy birthday and someone's, you naturally start clapping, and that's the concept. When the tempo increases, the clapping starts to go faster as well. And really that's the fundamental concept of the tala, that it works on this tempo and this constant cycle of beats which keeps on repeating. Now we'll talk a bit about the tala, and we'll use the tabla, which is the most popular instrument most popular percussion instrument in Indian classical music. So before going to the tabla, previously, we'll talk a bit about the history of the tabla, because it's really interesting. The tabla is known to be somewhere between 300 to 3000 years old, and it's really ambiguous how the instrument started and what's the origin of the instrument. The confusion is actually, did the instrument came first, or was it named the tabla first? So we'll first look at this approach about naming the instrument, which creates the whole confusion. And then we'll talk about the three more popular stories, the myths that are associated with the origin of the instrument. So the name of the instrument tabla is actually, now you can move to the next slide, is linked to table, surprisingly. The word table has, can you just move forward, sir? Next slide. The origins of the word are embedded in several languages, Spanish, French, and as you notice, the first paragraph, the term table is derived from merger of French table and Old English. So it's basically, it's the same word if you see. And then when you go to Sanskrit, which is a much older language, probably one of the oldest, it's also got the concept of tala, which is the surface of the hand, and hence our use of word tali for clapping. So the meaning of the word itself really does not tell us much about the history of the instrument, but it does clear one big misconception, which is that most tabla players think that the word tabla came from the tabal, which was a Middle Eastern instrument. That's not the case. This word has been really has been hanging around for a while, so we can't really figure out the history of the instrument by the name. So we'll move to the popular myths. There are three popular stories about the history of this instrument. Next slide, please. The first story is associated to Hazrat Amir Khusro, the music genius and the Sufi saint. And these are the two characters of that story, Pakhavaj and Hazrat Amir Khusro. So the story goes that Hazrat Amir Khusro took this ancient instrument, the Pakhavaj, he cut it into half, brought the side faces facing the top, and made this modern tabla. The problem with this general belief is that every tabla player thinks that this is the true history of the tabla. Whereas if you look at the literature, Hazrat Amir Khusro never once mentioned the word tabla in his work. So really this sort of refutes the theory. The second theory, which is also very popular, associated with the Delhi Gharana, next please. It's this gentleman, Ustad Siddharth Kandhari of the Delhi Gharana. The story has the same instrument, Pakhavaj. The story goes, when Ustad Dhari, he was playing the Pakhavaj, he was in sort of a competition with someone, and he lost it. So when he lost the competition, he was really angry. So he came back, he threw the instrument, and the instrument broke into two. Another version of the same story is that he was so angry that he took his sword and cut it into half. But really, this story is also not very valid, because you see the instrument, it's solid wood, it cannot break into two once you throw it. And when you're angry, no matter how strong you are, you can't cut it with the sword, so you really need to have a cutting instrument. And if I'm angry, I would not sit down and start sawing an instrument, so that's probably not true. Which leads us to the scientific data. Just next please. The instrument actually, we've got several proofs. The instrument tabla, similar looking instruments were found from the excavations of Indus Valley civilizations. We even have coins with the imprints. They were clay instruments with the skin on top, very similar. The ancient Vedic scripts mention similar instruments. We've got paintings and rock carvings which have got photos of instruments looking very similar to the tabla. Next, now I'll just call the two great musicians who will demonstrate a tabla solo, and before that we'll have a small demonstration of bowl, the language of the tabla. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ustad Muhammad Ajmal and Ustad Ijaz Hussain Ji.
3 ताल आप लोगों की खिदमत में पेश कर रहे हैं। 16 मात्रे का ताल है, जैसे कि आप सब लोग जानते हैं। 16 मात्रे का मतलब ये है कि एक दायरा मुकर्रर कर दिया जाता है, उसमें रहकर और 16 मात्रे में मुख्तलिफ तरीक़ों से तकसीम करके उन मात्रों को तो कंपोजिशन बनती है। ये जो आपने देखा था अभी, था धिन धिन धा, ये एक तबले की ज़बान है, जिसे पहले हम लोग इस तरह सीखते हैं, ज़बान से सीखते हैं। उसके बाद फिर वही बोल जो हैं तबले के अंदर से साउंड प्रूफ इसको करके और इस पे निकाले जाते हैं इस तबले के ज़रिए। जैसे कि था धा, धिन धिन, ता, तिन, किड़धा, कट तथा, धा कटका। ये इस तरह से मुख्तलिफ बोल हैं और इसकी बंदिश बना के कायदे की सूरत में, गत की सूरत में, परन की सूरत में इसको पेश किया जाता है। तो 3 ताल हम पेश कर रहे हैं जी। 16 मात्रे का ताल है। Tinda,